Next up, we're going to look at how to go after the printed circuit board on top of the chassis. You ever built a ship in a bottle? Neither have I. But I imagine it's something like what that would be. Okay, we have smoke. Where is the smoke coming from? How to go after the printed circuit board on top of the chassis. Now, basically, what you want to do is go after the ground stakes. There's one on this corner, there's one on this corner here, there's one in the middle next to that tube there. There's another in the corner by the HV cage corner, and there's one here. Before we do those, though, however, there are two wires that are generally taut enough that they make it hard to get the board far enough off the chassis to get at its underside. The two audio output transformer speaker leads and this ceramic capacitor's ground point right here. So you got to undo all three of those and then get the solder ground stakes up, and the board will lift up, and then we can access its underside. Now, we won't have marvelous access to it, but we will have access. Soldering in the new capacitors underneath the board in this method is going to be, well, you ever built a ship in a bottle? Neither have I. But I imagine it's something like what that would be. Only the bottleneck happens to be about 8 inches wide by an inch or so high. So let's get to it. That one was already a cracked ground joint. That's wonderful. That makes it a lot easier to take apart, and also makes it a lot more likely that the chassis wouldn't have worked even if we had tried it before. Now, sometimes you have to heat the point that the stake solders into the chassis point while you lift up on the board to get it to come free. Okay, now I'm at the point where I should get those wires loose. Okay, so I get the audio output transformer leads loose. Those can tuck under. Let's get the horizontal output tube out of the way for a while so that we don't have to think about it while we're working. Jeepers. Come on now. Okay. One last ground stake. And of course there's wires near it to make this a game of operation. Don't touch the plastic insulators and melt them. Come on. There we go. There. Now we can just pry it up about yay much. Don't apply too much force because you don't want to break the delicate printed circuit board. Okay, so as an example of how to change capacitors on the board now that it's separated enough from the chassis if you can sneak a soldering iron in underneath, I'm going to remove this 0.0068 600 volt capacitor. Now, you could use a thin little iron like this guy. This guy helps getting at some of the back ones. Or you can use a fat, high power soldering iron like this guy. You have to have enough separation to use the fat guy, though. So. There we are. That's now through the board. And the solder re-solidified around the lead, so I can't keep pushing it down. That's helpful. I'm going to stand this capacitor off the board just a little bit. Just so that I've got a convenient place up top to grab onto the leads if I so desire. Okay. You know, I am going to use the little iron. This will make this job nicer. Okay, both those leads are soldered in. Now I can chop the excess lead off and extract it. Okay, that capacitor's excess lead length has been trimmed down and it's installed nice and solid, and I can proceed to do the same thing on all the other capacitors. Okay, one chip in a bottle coming up. Okay, that cap's in. Don't feel any give in the leads. Sweet. Let's get rid of this 0.1600 and pretty up the chassis a little bit while we're at it. Where are you at? Probably getting very captivating footage of the top of my head right now. Come on. There we go. Nice thing about installing the new caps is you can kind of pick out the new clean leads. It makes figuring out where to stick your soldering iron that much easier. Okay, one more cap, and you'll have missed most of the boring drudgery of cap replacement. Then comes the bigger boring drudgery of resistor checks and replacement, because all of the carbon composition resistors on this board are suspect. Probably most of them are still okay, but there are enough of them that are going to be out of tolerance to matter, so better to just test them and change them now before soldering the board down. Now, on some of the Predictas, I believe the more common of the 3 21-inch consoles and the 21-inch table model all use a series string chassis that supposedly has very poor access to the underside of the printed circuit board, and on those you may want to consider just changing all of the capacitors and all of the K-networks like this and this and that. Those parts do fail, and on sets that are very difficult to take apart and put together like some of the other 21-inch Predictas, it may be a better use of your time and money to just replace them preemptively than to fix the set and have to go in and fix it again. Also, the tube sockets on these sets tend to fail. You see how this tube socket is a different type that has, grabbing on a tube, has a has the extra holes around the tube pinholes, and this socket here doesn't have that. It's because this socket here has been replaced by someone in the past. Ooh! And ruined. Probably not. That'll be fine. Yeah. Replacement sockets. That's something you'll sometimes find on these sets and something you'll often need to do. If you're going to test tubes or replace tubes on the set, I recommend pull tube out, test tube. Do not reinstall if bad. Get replacement and wait till replacement arrives to install. The less tube insertions or removals on the original sockets, the longer they'll last. They break in ways that are visually and sometimes electrically difficult to find. It's kind of an internal failure of the metal that connects the part that grips the pin to the part that connects the circuit board. Focus, pocus. Focus, darn it. Come on. Okay, fine, be that way. We'll just zoom you out a bit. Okay, so now we begin the wondrous process of checking that our resistors are in tolerance and kicking the camera tripod. Yeah, that's a great process. I'm sure everybody loves this. Okay, so parts like this little guy here, this guy, they're all resistors. Carbon composition resistors. And they aren't necessarily stable in value over time. What affects them worst is moisture and humidity. So in high humidity environments, like say being stored outdoors in a shed for decades, they'll soak up the moisture of the atmosphere and they'll typically drift high in resistance. So what we want to do is decode what their color code value is and check their resistance against the listed value, and also do a little bit of math to the listed value labeled on them to obtain the tolerance value. Basically, tolerance is the percentage. You go shopping and they say 10% off or 20% off. Well, on these resistors, it's add 10 or 20% to get the tolerance. Some of them, it's add 5%. Those are high precision units in a piece of equipment like this. So I'd like to interject that resistors can also go down in value. It's much less common with carbon composition resistors for them to go down in value, however. Also, resistors can falsely test at a lower value than they actually are if anything is in parallel with them, such as another resistor or an inductor. So unless I'm dealing with a problem that requires troubleshooting, I generally ignore resistors that are below tolerance. Let's just start with this red, orange, silver resistor. That would be 22,000 ohms with the silver band indicating a 10% tolerance. So let's just clip onto it and measure across it with our DMM. And through the glow we see 26.41. That looks wrong to me. I think the upper limit is 24 something. Now we can take our calculator and we can punch in, wow, that's hard to get on film. The value, 22 times 1.1, which is 110%, 1.1, and hit enter, and we get 24.2. So that guy's definitely out of tolerance at 26. It's higher than the maximum value that would be within specification. That maximum value being 24.2K. So we got to change this resistor. That's a 2-watt unit there, and I got lots of 2-watt units in my resistor kits. The bottom kit even has 1-watt resistors. One brand spanking new 5% 22K ohm resistor. Now, when replacing resistors, you always want to replace with the same tolerance or a tighter tolerance. So, if this was a 20% resistor, which would have no band, no fourth band, I should say, I would want to replace it with a 20% or a 10%, 10% being silver band. This is a silver band 10% resistor in there currently, so I want to replace that with either another 10% silver band or a 5% gold band. Heck, if you've got 1% or tighter precision resistors just laying around that you don't know what to do with, they'll work perfectly fine in anything that calls for a 1% or higher tolerance. You just don't want to do it the other way around. You don't want to replace, say, a gold band 5% resistor with a new 10% silver band resistor. That would be bad. Basically, most new production resistors tend to have tighter tolerances than labeled, especially when the new ones are labeled, say, 5 or 10%. They don't even make 20% resistors anymore. But usually the new ones are a lot tighter tolerance in terms of what you actually get from the factory than what the limits of the part specification call for. So this new resistor is probably within something like 1 to 2% would be my guess. Yeah, it's testing out at 21.57, which is pretty darn close to 22. Good enough. Let's solder it in. Whoa. Careful, Tom. Don't burn your fingers. Burnt fingers aren't fun. Why ain't you heating up, solder joint? Come on. There we go. That got it. Now, I just gotta get the other end, which is over yonder. Come on. There we go. Old resistor extracted. New resistor goes in. And if you can't read resistor color code, Google resistor color code. There are lots of handy calculators that will let you plug in the colors that you got and spit out a nice numerical answer. Okay, so we've completed replacing all of the off-tolerance resistors on the printed circuit board. Now you might want to take your time to pause and comment on how many resistors you think are off-tolerance on that board. For those who can't hazard a guess without a point of comparison, let's look at a chassis I did a few days ago before I started filming for this video. You can see, based on color, the new resistors that are installed on this board. Now, after you're done commenting, have a look at this one. There are more resistors that have failed on this. Let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 failed resistors. Okay, this chassis is all built up and ready for a test power-up. Now, technically, you really should recap the board, or chassis, sub-chassis, in the CRT unit. There's actually a tube on this. I've already done this one. There is one, I think it's a 0.22 microfarad capacitor right here. I think it's a 22 microfarad capacitor here, electrolytic. And there's another one tucked way up in here, paper cap, that's hard to see. I also went through and tested all the resistors and I found this one off tolerance. Now this isn't the actual head unit for this specific television, but it is a head unit for another TV of the same model, so it should work as a test unit. If you want to see what an original head unit looks like, here you go. We got this bumblebee capacitor, and it is indeed a 0.22. We've got the lytic here, and we've got the other paper capacitor kind of tucked up back here. And that's basically the electronics inside the CRT end of the of a Philco Predicta Tandem. Now, the non-tandem models where the head unit is permanently mounted to the cabinet where the main chassis is, they don't have this little sub-chassis. They just run wiring directly from the CRT neck and yoke and high voltage and such down into the base and hook directly into the chassis. But because there's 26 foot of interconnect cable that allows you to move the CRT unit 25 feet away from the main chassis, there needs to be this video amplifier board here to equalize video response and compensate for cable losses. Later on, I will restore the electronics for the other head unit that goes with this, but it's all recap and resistor check and replacement procedures that you've seen already in this video. But it gives you an idea of what's inside one of these. I think I will do a disassembly, reassembly of one of the head units to show how to get all of the coverings off and on, but that'll give you an idea of that. We're ready to give the chassis a test power up. Now we're going to start off the line input voltage to the set at 30 volts on the variac and slowly crank it up to the 117-ish volts it's supposed to get. When you've done recapping work, or when you're powering up an unknown chassis that hasn't been recapped for the first time to see what state it's in, you want to start at a low voltage, 10 to 30 volts, somewhere in there. Generally, when you've got solid state rectifiers, you want to start off at 10 volts or less, and when you've got tube, you want to start off at 30. When you've done recapping work and you're not 100% sure you've done everything perfectly, which you can almost never be, it's good to use a variac. It makes it so that you can catch things going wrong before they cause too much damage. How many watts are we drawing right now? 44 watts. That's kind of significant. Voltage isn't increasing much with voltage. It's only at 47 now that we're at about 50 volts. And it occurs to me that I never checked into that jumped out resistor. That resistor is this guy right here, and it is in series with the heaters, and the section would be somewhere between 8 and 17 ohms in value. I'm gonna take a wild guess that it's either the 8 ohms or the 17 ohms. If it's the 17, we won't get dial-light. If it's the 8 ohms, we'll get dial-light, but we'll have just slightly more heater voltage than we should. It won't cause any harm per se, but it's something to probably look into fixing in the near future. Analytics are still cool. Why aren't none of the tubes lighting? Okay, we have smoke. Smoke coming from? It's coming from the resistor. That's not good.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Okay. So, something's wrong. Time to do some double checking. I'll get back to you. So I think I understand what I did wrong with this chassis. Why we were getting excessive current. I installed this electrolytic backwards. Oops. Time to replace this with a new one because there's a substantial probability that this one's been damaged by reverse polarity connection. And then we will get back to the testing. Okay, we've replaced the capacitor that we had installed backwards. Now back to our regularly scheduled power up. 6 watts. Oh, I don't have a speaker hooked up to this. That's something I would like to have, so where's one of my test speakers? Here's one. This will work just fine. Wattage is remaining nice and low, despite having pretty significant voltage on the line input. We're only at about 19 watts at 60 volts. It's seeming reasonable so far. 70 volts and we're at 33 watts. Okay, the tube heaters are lighting. We're at 30 watts though. Let's increase the voltage a little bit more. Yeah, we're at a lot higher voltage on the variac than before, and the resistor hasn't started smoking. Luckily, the slow power up prevented destroying the resistor. A tiny bit of smoke from the resistor isn't the end of the world as long as you're not applying full voltage. So we've got about 60 watts and gradually climbing. I think I hear vertical sweep trying to start. We need to be on lucky channel 13 for our agile modulator. I think the CRT filament's lighting up. We have horizontal sweep. Do we have any kind of vertical sweep? Dim this line until things get a little bit better. Let's increase voltage again. Where are we at? We are at 96 volts AC according to the meter. Okay. Wiggling the vertical tube gets a sweep back. That's good. We have a full, albeit somewhat dim raster. Yeah, that's showing up on the camera. Okay, let's increase voltage some more. What are we even at voltage-wise? We should be able to just increase it to 117 at this point. I'm not seeing any warning signs of imminent explosion on this set. So, we do have, I don't have video. Let's just reduce brightness. Contrast is mixed out. There we go. Now we've got video and sound. Let's adjust the horizontal frequency. Now the horizontal hold pod is this potentiometer right here. It's actually a dual-ganged potentiometer. There's the user control and there's a hidden service control, which is inside the shaft of the user control. You use a small flathead screwdriver that fits inside the hollow user control and go in and adjust the frequency until synchronization. And vertical hold, where are you at? You are at one extreme.
To intervene in a challenge to the constitutionality of the republic. By the governor to defend him in this regard, and so something on every.
Okay, it's mostly working. We've got some issues. The sound doesn't seem to be jibing well with the best picture on the fine-tuning.
Tucker, ultimately it's going to come down to how much do people want to change in California, and I can tell you, even living in my latte-sipping, avocado-eating, Lululemon-wearing neighborhood in San Francisco, people are fed up with the crime, the drugs, the homelessness, the intermittent electricity, and everything else that is wrong with California, so people want to change here. It's just not working, and this really is a test of whether our system works. I mean, can people get better leadership? That's the question. Will there be election observers? The rest of us can know this was fair. Well, 100%. The problem in California is that voting doesn't just take place on election day like it would in a normal place. It's taking place now on a rolling basis through mail-in voting. It's 100% mail-in ballots this time around. And it is going to take place for 30 days after the election if it's closed, because they have 30 days to vote. That's 60 days.
Okay, it's late today, and there's some hiccups that I want to start trying to deal with, so I'll come back to this. For you, it'll be in a few seconds.
Play video games while we clean up your body, or your mother and I will hire people to break your knees.
School lunch and home repair. Now I gotta turn my back on you.
No!
I'm already out of the way of things we're looking at. Good looks aren't everything.
Hi, Summer. My cockpit's not getting Wi-Fi.
Dad, you know that's not what I
Okay, so we've got it working pretty good. I was able to tune up the audio to a pretty good compromise setting where there's a reasonable amount of volume and a pretty much a lack of buzz, except for certain settings of fine-tuning. But it's fine. It's got enough volume, it's got good enough picture at the settings that don't give buzz. Works for me. So, some of the more observant might have noticed that there used to be a series resistor that someone had tacked on to the vertical hold pot that isn't supposed to be there. So I figured out why that was there. Apparently someone made a wiring mistake under chassis and couldn't figure out what they did and did some hacks to make the set continue to work. On top of doing that, turn this off so I don't have buzz from my voltage regulating isolation transformer. In addition to that, this pot, I believe, is open from end to end, and in order to get it to work correctly, they just switched the unused terminal from being this one to being that one by moving this wire. So, it's got enough range on the control where it adjusts just fine within the section that's not burnt up, so I'm debating whether I change out this pot as a preemptive measure or if I just leave well enough alone since it works. We'll figure that out when we're closer to putting together free working television sets. Okay, shaky ass B-roll time. So this terminal right here is the junction between C37 and R56. Some idiot had moved this capacitor and this capacitor from being on this terminal being on this terminal. I'm pretty sure it was the previous person who worked on this set because they did their best to compensate for it by adding that goofy series resistor to the vertical hold pot. So correcting these things got the vertical frequency correct and allowed me to remove that goofy series resistor on the vertical hold pot and get proper hold range. So with that, I'm calling this chassis pretty much done. There's one remaining thing. I think this resistor section that's been jumped out might be for the dial light. I'm gonna address this being open and get the dial light working, and then I'm going to declare this chassis good. And I'm going to build up a couple of the remaining TV chassis to be completely fault-free. So far I've got the original one that I redid last year that I need to deal with a retrace issue on, and I've got the one I did just before this chassis which has a weak audio problem. I'm probably going to take the one I did just before this chassis and my parts chassis and swap some stuff around and see if I can make one chassis that has good audio and good everything else between the two of those, and also see if I can fix the retrace problem on the other chassis. Then I'll figure out what my best chassis and CRT combo is and put those together. You might also get to see me do a quick recap and check over and disassembly on a CRT head shell. We'll get to that soon. Well, this thing definitely had two solid hack repairs on it. There was nothing wrong with the large power resistor. The section that they had jumpered out measured basically within tolerance of its rated resistance value, so someone just jumped it out for no good reason. Before I even removed that jumper, I swapped out the dial light here for one that wasn't burnt out, and it came right on. So that resistor wasn't even helping with the dial light. It just happened to be randomly jumped out because someone got paranoid over something or another. Okay, on to new stuff. Today we're looking at hardware HD video sources that can be recorded onto DVHF. Psych, that's too new for this video. It has its own video, which you can see in the link in the top right-hand corner. Now back to the Predicta video. So, the other chassis with weak audio, I can inject audio past the detector and get reasonable volume, and I can inject 4.5 megahertz from my B&K 1077, this guy here. I can inject 4.5 megahertz FM modulated audio from that to the input of the audio IF amp and points along the way to the detector and get sound, but not enough sound. Clearly on the set of bad audio, the audio IF, which is part of this board, something's wrong with it. All the resistors check good. The tubes check good. The relevant capacitors have been replaced. I mean, at this point, that board, most likely it's a problem with one of the coils on the board, or something that's going to be a pain in the butt to find, seeing as how all the voltages look right. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to take the lazy way out. Since I have a parts chassis, I can just pull this board off of it, recap this board, and stick it on the other chassis and see if it works. There's 30 interconnect wires. If you want to take the board completely off, you want to mark the colors of the wires, where they are, where they go on this printed circuit board so you can get them onto the correct terminals and all that. But since I've got 4 of these television sets, I can just use another one as a wiring reference to figure out where all the wires go back onto the printed circuit board. And if you don't like doing the ship in a bottle approach where you don't disconnect the circuit board but you just lift it slightly and work underneath it, what you can do to avoid the ship in the bottle approach is just remove the whole circuit board after making that diagram to tell you how to hook the wires back up, and hey look, you can get at all the solder traces now. So I'm going to recap this board this way since I can. Let's get the parts chassis out of here, shallow grave. Boy, I feel like taking this thing outside and giving it a hose down. Probably find a way of cleaning this while I've got it off. Okay, well, let's just try to do a fast recap on this. Okay, all caps have been rounded up. Let's just buzz them in as quick as we can. Oh, tube self-supported. That's nice. Starting nuts. Okay. Let's do it here. I don't need. That's the 333, which this one is. Okay, let's go and twist. Everybody twist. Put that down. That. Spare. Well, we'll just pretend we didn't slightly lift that trace, and we'll just bend the lead over it so it can't lift up again until another 80 years in the future when someone ends up changing that capacitor. And that seems reasonable. Okay, let's set that one in. Big obnoxious blob of lead 1, big obnoxious blob of lead 2. Okay, so grab one center, which is this here. Okay, that goes to the terminal there. So, got that loose. Okay, let's just flip around and go for the other one, which is this big obnoxious blob that someone else put there. I might have been able to drink beer with the guy who built this set, or rather rebuilt this set. Okay. All the resistors and capacitors have been changed out, and this is ready to try popping onto the chassis that has weak sound. We'll see if this creates an improvement in sound performance on that. Why am I going through all the effort to unwrap the terminal fully? That just seems silly. Tom, why haven't you made up a diagram of where all the wires go? I got 2 more of these TVs that are wired up and working. I don't need no stinking diagram. I just look at the other TV. Oh, wait. I'm gonna get copyright from music. Well, maybe I can just mute it in post. Or I can just put some helium and I can talk really fast like this and I'll never be done in 30 seconds. Or less. Or Domino's will give me a free pizza. They just played this 5 minutes ago. Oh, God. history, just like a Romeo and Juliet. Really? I wonder. No, that's not. Oh, whatever. Well, making a stretch, dagnabbit. Rainy night in Jar Jar Binks. Rainy night in Jaja. Misa, Misa, rainy night. Okay. Perfect. Now I just need to rip up all the ground lugs, and this should be golden. Come on. Let go. Okay. That gets rid of the old crummy board. You know, I'm gonna do one little selfish thing. So, I went to the effort of rebuilding this K-network here on this board. I'm gonna transfer that onto my other one so I don't have to later. To wear some Eberts in your hair. Let's see this. Okay, it's all installed. Let's see if it's got what it takes. Get over here, you antenna, you. Smurf angel, will you be mine?
If your employer doesn't supply healthcare coverage and you don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, you need to give us a call right now. Private healthcare is private health insurance for ages 65 and under with no deductible. To get the coverage you need, call the number on the screen now.
I'm scared that we might not have horizontal drive. Okay, well, since I'm scared of that, let's just... See, ladies, we don't remember. We don't remember nothing. We plead the fifth. So... we're not getting horizontal. That's concerning.
There she is. A birdhouse. I just hope whoever moves in doesn't mind the Persian birds next door.
One should be 190 volts.
Because that could really mess up my...
So I've got no clue where I left off, but after I changed the board, as a quick recap, after I changed the board, I figured out that the horizontal OS coil was bad, and also on top of that, I had the, see these two wires right here that come out of this, I'm going to need to resolder that. Actually, not so much resolder, it's strip and solder. The lead just snapped off of itself. I had the ground and the wiper of the horizontal output reversed on this wire, and that caused loss of horizontal drive as well. So fixing those two things got me horizontal drive back. Video, despite the washout of the room lighting here, video's quite good. Got good contrast and brightness. Sound is pretty decent now with the board that doesn't have the weak sound issue installed, so I think I'm going to call this chassis basically done. The next thing I'm going to be doing is taking the first chassis I bought and fixed and trying to iron out the retrace line issue with that. Once that's done, I'm going to evaluate which chassis forms best and fix up one more CRT head unit. And actually, really, it's going to be taking pieces of all 4 head units and making 3 nice head units, and one that has a bum CRT that has all of the remaining parts. And once all that's done, I can take the best performing head unit and chassis and pair that up with my keeper cabinet and assemble the best outer head shell plastic components onto that unit to make the nicest head shell. And once those are all completed, I can go about taking the remaining parts and building 2 nice functional sets to sell off, and taking anything that remains after that and putting it into one part set that I don't know what I'll do with, but I'll figure something out. Okay, so I needed to, how you say, replace the wood base on the CRT of my keeper set, because this was the old base, and as you can see it needs a refinish. And since I have one set where the CRT is necked and that one's not going to get restored, stealing its wood base that still has really good finish was the way to go rather than refinishing the original. I could have refinished the original, but this is just easier. How to go about swapping the bases? There's a board with felt on it that's supposed to be secured with these 3 screws. You unscrew that, pull it off. You remove this little bracket here that's supposed to hold the cable on. That's gone because the new base is partially installed. You unscrew the auxiliary speaker jack here in the base. You unscrew the 3 screws here.
Here. Obviously, it was like an intercom, because look above you.
There's a dial tone.
No, there isn't.
And down there that hold the wood base to the brass collar right here. And you have to then go up to here and unsolder all of these wires from the video driver amp board and the deflection yoke. The deflection yoke has 3 wires, the 2 horizontal here and the vertical hot, which gets returned through the ground wires on the amplifier board. You've got also a high voltage lead and its ground or shielding sheath. And how many are these guys? Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These 8 wires here that go to the video amp board in various places. Photograph how it was before you do something like this, and you should be able to undo it. I photographed it anyway, but I didn't need to because I have another set over here that I can just look at the color coding and how the wires are routed and base my work off that. So I'm gonna get this all put back together and retest it, and then I'm going to swap this CRT out for a different cathode ray tube, because this one has a burn spot near its center from the shutoff dot, which apparently was a common issue with a lot of different television sets in the 50s, because a lot of them, the circuit designers didn't build in circuitry to suppress that dot on power off. I may or may not bother to do that. I'm probably for now not going to bother to do that. Easy solution if you don't want to go through the process of finding or designing a circuit to do that is just turn the brightness down when you turn the television set off so that the spot doesn't linger so long. This is the complete head shell for the first of the two sets that's going to be put up for sale. So, you want to know how to make a dirty, disgusting Predicta Tandem umbilical cable look like new? Well then, click the link in the upper right hand corner to see the video I did on that. So, this is the cabinet that I believe had the unusual brass-based head unit with the white connector cable. I suspect this unit might have been maybe some type of using up of parts from the blonde sets. All the mahogany sets I've seen typically use this for a speaker grill cloth. The pattern's different, and this is real brass right here, although it is a bit tarnished on this one. This one appears to be original, but it uses a different grill cloth, and this isn't brass, but some type of vaguely brass-colored sticker that I've decided I'm going to peel since it looks terrible. You can see underneath there is pristine white. So what I'm going to do is I am going to remove the entire fascia board like this one from that cabinet, and I am going to remove the retaining clip for the contrast and on-off volume knob. I'm going to remove this plastic bezel so I can peel this better and then put this over top of a clean surface. I'll leave the white there as it is, and I'll also re-glue the speaker grill cloth, which really isn't in there that well anymore. Once I do that, I think I'm going to declare this cabinet done. It does have some, well, there's one other thing I'm going to do to the cabinet. It does have a little bit of scratching to the top and some flaking to the sides, particularly up along this edge. Everything except for the face molding, basically this edge forward, and the legs on this cabinet is everything aside from those two things is photo finish. This top, the sides, they're photo finish, which is basically a process of applying a phony wood grain over masonite. I believe what the process was is the lightest colors you'd see in the wood would be the base coat. Then they would put a monochromatic water slide decal, essentially, massive one with a wood grain pattern to it over top of that, which would darken the base color to give the wood grain effect. Then they'd coat over that with lacquer or some other finishing material. I am not skilled enough of a woodworker to want to re-veneer this entire thing to cover up the failing photo finish, and I'm not enough of an artist to do more than try to hide the photo finish. So what I'm going to probably do is try to darken some of these spots to make them blend with the cabinet as one of the previous owners did in this area where the photo finish is missing. Also, I need to re-glue this sideboard. The glue that holds it to the main cabinet, a good portion of it has failed over the years. Also, I think one of the, not sure if you can see this. Yeah, you can see this. This glue joint here has failed, so I'm going to have to fix that too. So this cabinet's going to get significant disassembly and reassembly before it's ready for final assembly. Okay, time for me to get to it. Okay, so I pulled off the legs from the cabinet. There's just 4 screws in the leg assembly that take them off the cabinet. Now to get the speaker board out, you need to remove a whole bunch of things, but first off is this bottom fiber board. There's basically, let's see here, 2, 4, looks like 7 screws that hold this on this particular set. I've seen other ones where there's screws in the corners here and a different pattern along the bottom, so this is definitely a slightly different cabinet revision than the ones I'm used to disassembling. I'm forgetting. There are also 4 screws on the interior that hold a board that's glued to the fiber board in. And I have to get those too. Come on. I love lightly stripped out Phillips screws. They just make my day. My thumb is still sore from polishing those cables yesterday, so that is not helping my grip any. Come on. I wonder. Yeah, I can actually get out the chassis support bars, and that would, I think I can get them out anyway, and that would help life quite a bit on a couple of the stubborn screws. Normally I take out these bars after I get the bottom off, but we'll just reverse the order because that's definitely gonna work. Nope. We're gonna try it anyway. Oh, they actually gave screw holes for getting at those on this end. That was nice of them. That's gonna make life so much less miserable. Come on. Whoa. Oh, that was unexpected, but okay. That's one down. Put our screws back in the holes they came out of for storage so they don't magically disappear like that one just tried to. These I laid out such that I could remember what holes they went in when I put them back in. Right now, that's forward thinking. I used finer headed screws on this cabinet than the other cabinet in certain places. Either this one's had screws swapped out, which is entirely possible because the finish of the raw wood looks like it's been messed with. Stripped out. Come on. Is the tip of my screwdriver any good? It's not the worst. Yeah, that's pretty stripped. Dang it. Yeah, someone's had this cabinet apart to some extent before, and they've done weird things. Well, I see so many things that just make me want to have words with whoever the last person to work on this before me was. Okay, so after you've got your bottom board off, which I may have made a semi-magical process via not preventing my camera from running out of recording time and automatically stopping on its own, we'll forget about that for now. The next step, once you've got your bottom board off and these two metal things that I fished off mid-bottom board, usually I fish them off after I get the bottom board off, but this bottom board was stubborn, so in order to get the speaker board and channel face, the front inner board off, you gotta remove one of these from inside here. This one didn't have any screws and was loose inside the cabinet, so someone was definitely messing with this before me. The other one right here doesn't seem to be secured very well. I almost could just rip it out, but that probably isn't the best way to do it, so let's just try to persuade these screws to let go, like that. And put those off on the side for later. Reinstall. This board is supposed to be better installed than that board, but it sure doesn't feel like it's well fixed. Another bit of evidence that someone's been messing around in here is this spot here and this spot here. You see how the channel indicator's right there? These are for the brass strip that divides the bezel for the channel knob and volume knob from the speaker grill cloth. There's supposed to be push nuts here and here. I don't have my example board from the other set on hand. There's supposed to be flat, square push nuts on these. One of them's missing, and the tang along with the push nuts missing over here. So someone clearly took that apart at some point, because I haven't seen those bits inside the cabinet. Yeah, normally this board, which on this set doesn't appear to be affixed to this, normally this board would be glued onto here, but I'm not seeing much evidence that it was. This may be a production change, or the glue may have failed and nobody ever got around to fixing it. Well, I'll just continue that tradition of not fixing that. Here's an example. These right here are push nuts for the little Philco badge on the grill cloth. Something similar to those would be right here and here. Okay, so to get this out, you just tilt it back, and there's a little gap here where it fits in. So just lift it out of the gap like so, and ta-da! One removed grill cloth. And probably not the best idea, but we'll put that on top of there for now, and take care not to disturb it. Okay, so yeah, it looks like this was, at one point, this plastic decal was brass, but not much anymore. The white underneath's pretty nice, so I'm gonna strip down to that on this cabinet. Push nut. How do I get the push nut off of here without cracking that? I've got a spare in my part set if I need to, but I forgot to destroy original parts if I can help it. Let's see here. There's going to be a way of persuading on this push nut. Yeah, I think if I get underneath each of these fingers, pry up slightly in the gap, yeah, that's lifting up. Oh yeah, I just got to keep doing that a little bit more. Work it off slowly. Yep, there we go. Came off nice and easy. Good. I think I'll probably dump this in some glass cleaner later. Let's see what the state of the material underneath here is. Do a nice vaguely pornographic sticker peel. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely getting rid of this sticker. You know, push nuts that hold this piece of chrome on are out to lunch, so I should be able to just Yeah, I think I like that better. I'm half tempted to swap the actual brass back piece onto this, but we'll do without it for now. And if anyone complains to me who might be interested in buying this set, well, I'll just do some alchemy and magics and try to swap the one from the other set onto this, I guess. Okay, so I also want to, since this wood board doesn't seem to be glued to the thin speaker board on this set, my other set, these two pieces are glued together. Since it doesn't seem to be the case on this one, I am going to remove the only two things that seem to be holding these two boards together right now, which is the push nuts on the Philco badge. Come on, push nuts. Good. That one came off without breaking anything. Next. And that one too is cooperative. Excellent. Now we can pull our little Philco badge out of here gently. And take our backer board and chuck it over there. And there we go. Now that this is pretty much free, I am going to work to get some glue behind this grill cloth and just kind of stretch everything and flatten it all into a good position and make it so that this set has a nice looking grill cloth that doesn't look all bulged and floppy and warped and whatnot. Okay, change of plans. Since the backer board with the white channel and volume escutcheon over there is pretty warped behind the speaker, and clearly the white plastic with faded out brass sticker over it was intended to be a later revision cheapening of this solid brass panel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this backer board and this brass panel and transplant the grill cloth from that backboard onto this backboard. And that'll make a better part for the set that I end up selling, and I'll just keep the rest of the stuff for my my part set and figure out what I want to do for my part set. Right now I'm leaning towards harvesting the back connector from the part set and making a, and the cable which is disconnected from its head, and making an additional 26-foot extension cable for a Predicta head shell, and see how far away from the main cabinet one can put a Predicta CRT and still get a watchable picture, at least within the limits of the cabling that I have available to me. So I've got the cabinet side glued and clamped, and I've done a little bit of additional gluing and clamping to the structure because in a few places the structural glue joints were not in very good shape until I re-glued them. I've also put the better grill cloth on the actual brass face piece and merged it all together. So this will be the new fascia for that cabinet. Okay, future time here, editing the video months in the future from when it was originally filmed. So this is my keeper Predicta Tandem, along with an extension speaker, working beautifully. So what happened with the Philco Predicta Tandem triple restore project? Well, I put this set together around the time the video filming ended. Well, I hit the point in the project where I hit burnout. I got sick of working on these things and wanted to get them done and get the spares in my collection sold. So I stopped filming and I dug in and I finished things up. Where the video ended, I had 3 good working chassis and head units electronically. And this set was pretty much all put together. None of the cabinet pieces on it, aside from the face of the screen, needed any significant attention. The 2 sets that I sold, in the end, all the sets ended up being a mishmash of all 4 sets. My keeper set that I still have right here is the chassis and most of the head unit and cable from the set I had the longest. I mixed and matched head shell housing pieces to make the best looking head shell. I took the cabinet from the nicest of the sets that I bought after my original set was purchased, as well as the back from the nicest one of those sets, and I put it all together into this package. I also picked the nicest antenna and the nicest knobs and so on. The other 2 sets that I assembled as working completed television sets, I'll put some pictures of them in as I talk, the other 2 sets were trade-offs. The one with the nicest cabinet had, I believe, the nicest working chassis, but it had a picture tube that was on the lower end of good among the usable picture tubes I had for these. The set that was sold with the worst of the two cabinets, and it wasn't a bad cabinet, that set ended up with the stronger of the two picture tubes in the sets that I sold. That set was the one you saw me working on the cabinet of last. That set, I was able to get it all glued together and shored up, and I was able to get some attention to the rubbed off pieces of wood grain to hide the wear on them. The nicer of the two cabinets that I sold was a mix about 90% of the lower cabinet from the first set that I bought, and a piece from the worst set. Basically, that cabinet, someone had drilled through the drill bars in a couple of places to add a power switch when the main front switch failed. What I learned is that on the majority of these Philco Predicta cabinets, this line right here and this line right here are actually points where different panels of the cabinet meet up and are glued and screwed together. The glue is typically kind of old and weak on many of these, so if you undo the screws, you can actually pull the side panel off of one of these cabinets and swap it for a side panel from another one of these cabinets. And that's what I did to make that cabinet, which aside from the drill holes was perfect. That's what I did to make that cabinet look perfect. My worst cabinet that I still have right now in my parts set, the finish is terrible on the legs. The top was completely ruined and painted a solid brown, and only the side panels were really in excellent shape. So I was able to borrow a side panel off of it to make that second best cabinet that was the best cabinet that I sold into a more perfect looking cabinet. I still have my parts set. It's currently in storage, waiting for me to figure out what I'm going to do with it. I can't really restore the parts set unless I were to find a good picture tube. And the parts set's missing a lot of cosmetic pieces like the brass handle and trim ring around the picture tube, and has a lot of cabinet damage. It's not a very good specimen. What's probably going to happen is either A, I'm going to sell the part set, or B, I've heard that you can find certain Sony Trinitrons that have a picture tube that will fit inside the head shell of these Predictas. I've got this crazy idea in my head that maybe I get one of those Trinitron tubes, pop it in here, use the impedance matching that CRT test jigs have that allow an old tube-style yoke in the test jig to be driven by a solid-state chassis, hook that impedance conversion network up backwards so that I could use a tube chassis to sweep a Trinitron CRT, and try to build a tube color Predicta. Honestly, I'm not sure if I could find the parts, let alone make that happen, but it would be an interesting thing to try. One of the things I'm considering doing also is there are a few marks of discoloration on the cable to this set from it being electrical taped into a cable roll. And I'm thinking about taking the cable from the parts set, if it happens to be nicer, and trying to swap it out for the cable that this set uses. The only reason why I haven't done a cable swap with this set is at some point in time, the ridiculously thin factory high voltage pin in the middle of the connector plug failed on this set, and previous owners figured out how they could convert the plug over to using a banana plug connector for the high voltage connector pin. And this is my best chassis, and the chassis and picture tube are both rigged up for that large banana pin connector. I think it would be possible for me to transplant cables if I swap the plug from this cable over to the new cable, as well as swapping cable onto picture tube head shell. We'll see if I actually get around to that or not. I may just live with the cable as is because it's not bad. Let me know what you think I should do with the parts set going forward. This Minty Keeper set is going to stay as a permanent part of my collection, but the fate of the parts set remains very much up in the air right now. Let me know what you think I should do with it. So one thing I never got around to filming during the Predicta Tandem restorations is how to dismantle the safety case head shell of a Predicta. This 17-incher I've got here has never had its screen polished, and it needs it. So I'm thinking about dismantling this set to polish the screen and making a video on how to get the safety case open on Philco Predictas. Let me know if you're interested in seeing that video. Thanks for watching the video. If you like this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more vintage electronics content.